Well, it's Groundhog Day again. I mean, time to make another series of tutorials that will lead into will inevitably be one of the most epic Cartoon Smart starter kits to date. And if you don't know what that means, basically we teach a lesson that is so darn good by the end of it, we realize that, you know, with a couple more months worth of work, we could make it into something that is easy to use for virtually anyone without doing any programming. But I appreciate all of you that watch these basically making of tutorials, because when you get to learn a lot of stuff too. But this is going to have certainly a lot of applications when we get done in terms of making a card and board games. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and just create a new iOS application. We're going to set this to be game, and we'll just call this card and board games. How's that for a project, right? And then the technology here is, of course, Swift and Sprite Kit. Just click on next, and we'll figure out where we're saving this. Worst possible place, the desktop. And now I've set this up for iOS. So if you were to go over here, you'd see you're going to be there by default, but you'd see that the deployment info down here has us set to a universal app, and of course we want that for iPhone and the iPad. Whether or not this is a portrait or landscape, who knows? Let's just go ahead and by default make it landscape, and that'll be better for the TV anyway, but you can of course change that down the road. Requires full screen. I don't know why that is not checked off by default nowadays. And what we've got here is our iOS target, okay, so for either the iPad or the iPhone. Now what we're going to do is add in here a new target, and this is going to target the tvOS. So yet again, we're going to put in here game, and we'll call this card and board games. Yet again, Swift and Sprite Kit, obviously. Click on, oh, sorry, I forgot I gotta add that in there. TV, there we go. And I have the darndest time trying to get this thing. Look, I made it worse actually, trying to get that out. But we might just have to forget about that for a moment. Well, anyway, you can see that if I click over here, I've now got my two targets, and obviously this one is. You can see it says card and board games TV. Not much else really to note down over here. You're not going to ever change the orientation of this. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in the rest of this video is really just set up. So if you feel completely comfortable setting up both essentially a universally purchasable app, one that builds to both the iOS and tvOS, I'd say you can go ahead and skip ahead. One of the main things that we're going to be looking at, though, is opening up the right initial scene file based on a particular device, and then we're also going to look at bringing in assets for one device or another. And and by the way, I should point out too that you'll notice that we did get this other folder over here, or grouping of assets for the TV. And actually, one thing you'll notice is that when we made the TV version, we got two asset catalogs here. This is where you can dump your images in, and you can literally dump them in. You can just drag them off of the desktop. But yeah, for the TV, we got a game assets catalog and just an assets catalog, which obviously shares the same name as the one over here for the iOS. But this one didn't get just a kind of general game assets catalog. But that's actually something that we can modify right now. We can specify that we want our iOS version to also pull in its assets from over here, and that certainly makes things a lot easier. And I'll show you guys some cool tips for basically being able to use your images for the TV and the iOS without any significant changes. Actually, without no changes to the asset itself, usually. So yeah, let's take a look at that. We're going to need to go and start over here, and then go over here to your build settings. The build phases, and you'll notice that we have different build phases for different targets. So remember, this is our iPhone one. Darn it, I wish that thing would just move off to the side. But let's unfold our copy bundle resources, and you'll notice that in here for the iPhone we've got that assets catalog over there, but there's not much else, right? So let's go ahead and just hit the plus sign on this and pick out that we also want to include in to the iPhone version or iOS version, our game assets catalog, and magically we did just do that. And then over here on, well, here's what we have to decide. Which one of these GameScene.swift files and GameViewController files are we going to get rid of? Because we don't need them both, and actually the same thing is true for the scene file. We don't need both of them for both targets. We only want to write code in one of them, and we're going to write our code in such a way that we can use it on both. So let's figure it out. Well, since our game assets are over here, let's dump the code out of this one, and we'll kind of favor the tvOS version. So what we're going to do is get rid of the SKS file, move to trash, move to trash for that one. I should have just shift selected those, and move to trash over there. So then back over inside of our build phases, I still got the iOS version selected, and what I need to do is unfold this and pick out now that we want to include in here our GameScene.swift file, our game view controller. And let me just double check with the tvOS version that, okay, so the game scene goes into your copy bundle resources. And that's the scene file that will lay out all of our stuff in. So back over here in iOS, then let's hit the plus sign again and then just find, well, actually, you know what? Sorry to be wishy-washy about this, but we're going to end up creating a duplicate scene anyway that'll be device dependent. So hold that thought for just a moment. And in fact, you know what? You don't even have to hold that thought. Why don't we just go over here, select this, and we are going to rename it TV, and then keep it selected. Let's go over here to duplicate, and oh, look at that. We're going to call it phone. We might not end up ultimately using this front part anyway, but just for demo purposes. And then let's click off our card and board games version and then unclick this target. Okay, so we don't want this to get built for the TV version. And then we're going to do the same thing for the iPad, duplicate, and this is going to be game scene pad. And it's defaulted again to just being for the TV because that's what we duplicated from. So go ahead and just make sure that that is set for the iPhone version, iOS version. And then let's double check that just to make sure. All right, so you can see that with the iOS version selected, we've got our phone and our pad scene files inside of here. So that looks good. And I'd say that we are about ready to roll, but we're a long way off probably from testing. Let's go ahead and kind of do a little bit of reorganization here. I'm going to go ahead and select all of the scene files that we've got, and I'm going to create a new group out of these, a new group from selection, and let's just call these scene files. That way they're all in one place, and we're not having to kind of worry about which grouping they're already in. And these are just groups. I should point that out. And by group, I mean it's not even in a folder like in the Finder. These are just these kind of ethereal groupings that we've come up with inside of the project. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't really, you know, you can organize these however you want. If you want to put all of your info files into one folder, that's fine too. A lot of times I will actually take the assets and move them around just based on, yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea. Let's do that. Let's put that over there. Well, these are our main kind of art assets. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these asset catalogs inside of the particular device because now we're just kind of relegating these to being used for launch images, icons, things like that. And by the way, we don't need that spaceship. Let's go ahead and get rid of that guy. And if he's over here too, no, you know what? I think he's over there. Get rid of him there. We won't be making a spaceship game. Okay, so then let's do this. Let's also take our kind of most important code and make that into a group as well. So right click on that, new group from selection. So if you want to just put in here code classes or classes, whatever it is. Probably let's just go with code for right now. And we'll peel that out of there as well. So now we're kind of left with our top three things that we're going to be going to over and over again. You can unfold that stuff, and there it is. So scene files, code, and our game assets. Now let's go ahead and make it so that when we build this for a particular device, it is gonna we're gonna pull the correct scene file and load that up. Now remember, each one of these scene files is still going to use GameScene.swift for the code, kind of its engine, but we could lay out the items in a different visual manner for the particular whatever we got over here. So we're going to do that with the game view controller. This is what kind of gets the party started, and you can see that when this loads up, it's basically just creating a scene variable, and it's specifying that the game scene is going to be the class used, and then the file named this is going to be your SKS file. And remember, when we started this, we just had game scene. We didn't have game scene TV, phone, or pad, right? So ultimately, what we want is a specific string for a specific device. And I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. We are going to create a variable called, and it's not really a variable, it's a constant, so its value is not going to change. It's a full SKS name to load, and past students have probably seen this before. And what we're going to do is make this equal to the return value from a specific function. And that function name is going to be, I have to look it up. Oh, here we go. Check if SKS exists. Okay. And then what we're going to do is pass into this a base name, and then use that to put in the suffix TV, phone, or pad. So we're going to hard code in game scene, right? And then we actually have to write this function, otherwise we're going to get a lot of complaints. So just come down here. Let me give us a little bit more room. Func, and this will be check if SKS exists, and what we're going to pass into this function is that base SKS name, and that's going to be a string, and what we're going to get out of it is going to be a string. So you get this nice, cool little pointer over here that's basically just saying, hey, you know what? We're kind of committing to returning a string value, and to return something, you just put down here at the bottom. Return, but well, we could just say hi for right now, and we would actually not get any more complaints, I don't think. Well, it's telling me that I haven't actually used this full SKS name, although this is a fun little note that it's basically saying replace let full SKS name load with just that underscore, which we're going to see in just a moment. So it's kind of like it realizes that you're not using this, but maybe you have your reasons for it being in there. So just put that in, and you're not going to hear any warnings anymore. And warnings are not a big deal. People have, if you're a new programmer, you think, what's going on with that? But you get them up for all sorts of different reasons. I don't like to ever publish a file for you guys that's got a warning in it because people think it's the end of the world. But a lot of times they're saying, hey, you know what, iOS 30 is going to deprecate this particular thing, so watch out, all right, so let's do what we're going to do here. Well, let's go ahead and just take our full SKS name and put that where it's ultimately going to end up, which is going to be just in our file named over here, right? So that's going to, remember, it's going to have its suffix in there. All right, so now everything's kind of like going groovy, but we need to actually write the rest of this function. So inside of here, we're going to put var full SKS name to load. It's going to be a string value equals base SKS name. Oh, and you know what? I'm sure one of you out there is probably thinking, well, why don't we just hard code in, if it's the iPad, if it's the phone, then, you're going to do this. And essentially we are doing that, but I'm kind of taking this one little step further and just making sure that the project actually has these base extensions in here before I'm going to commit to loading it up. Otherwise, it's the Ghostbuster situation where, they cross the streams and who knows what's going to happen. So, but here's that if statement. So we're going to say if UI device dot current device dot user interface idiom equals dot pad. I don't know why I'm starting with the iPad, but if that's the case, then what we're going to do So we're on the iPad. We're going to say if, oops, don't need that. If let, and then do that kind of variable that the program's not going to care whether or not we use it. If GameScene file named, and then we're going to put in here base SKS name. All right, remember that's this right here. Plus, this is going to make sense in a moment, don't worry. Pad. If it's able to basically make a variable out of this, okay, then what we know is that this scene file exists. All right, otherwise this is just going to fail. Okay, so if that's the case, then what we're going to say is our full SKS name to load is now going to equal our base SKS name plus pad added on to the end of it. Okay, now you'll notice that what we did over here is eerily similar to what we had up here at the top, right? Where we're actually making our scene variable that we're going to present, okay? So we're just doing this like little baby step before that. This just gets tossed out if we're not using it, okay? But it at least tells us that we got, you know, a scene file with that. And then what we can do is obviously put in here, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm sorry. Don't make that the else statement. Make this the else statement. So we're going to say else if, and we can just go ahead and do a big old copy of this. We're going to check then to see if it is the phone. And if it's the phone, then we're going to put in here phone, right? And then the same thing is going to be true for the TV. So else if and .tv, or just TV. And then by the end of it, we're going to actually take our full SKS name and return that. So kind of built it all up. And remember, if some of these were to fail or whatever, it's kind of no harm, no foul, because remember, we just passed in here our base SKS name. So it's just going to get passed right back out to us with any sort of, without any sort of suffix on it. And now we should actually be able to test to see if we load up different files for a different device. Of course, we need to go into these and retool them a little bit. Well, one big thing to start with our TV version is that we need to set the size to 1920 by 1080. It's still odd to me that Apple hasn't adjusted that. But I'm actually going to do the same thing for the iPhone. So I'm going to go over here to my iPhone, and remember, we duplicated these versions from the iPad anyways, or the whatever, this one. So it's they've all got this 1024 by 768 value. But still, even if you start a tvOS project, it puts in those iPad values. That's all. The only thing I was saying is weird. I did put 1080 right on the other one, not 1024. Okay, so you're now wondering, wait a minute, why are you setting a TV size for this little itty bitty phone? And I'm sitting right next to a TV and I've got a phone in my hand, and it seems absurd, right? Okay, here we go. Some of you know this. This makes it so that we can use 1x images, okay, for the TV, but then also use them for our iPhone, okay? This is about 3 times larger than it needs to be, okay? Let's take a little color sprite out here. So really, your phone is something like this big, okay? And actually, comparing a phone to a TV is a bad comparison, because really, pixel-wise, it's more something like this, right? So this would be your phone. This would be like maybe double your phone or something, and then there's the TV size over there. So so if we have a image that is unnecessarily bigger than the device, right? What happens? It's it's kind of laid out over here, right? And then it gets shrunk down into this size. But of course, all of our iPhones are not 1x devices anymore. They're 2x or 3x devices. So shrinking it down, compresses those pixels together, thus giving us that nice crispy 2x and 3x resolution graphic. The cool part about this is I could take our, let's pretend that this is a red square, okay, an actual image that's a red square, and duplicate, and then just copy it and paste it into your TV version, right? Look at that. It's the same size, okay? We didn't have to change the size of the graphic or do anything like that. So really the kind of oddball here is, I'm just going to get rid of that, is our iPad, which you know, it's 1024 by 768. But here too, we can just double this. So we can just go over here to 2048, make this 1536. Can you believe I remember that? 1536. And now let's go ahead and just paste in that same image, and it does it. You can just tell, you know, that this is about the same size as what we, you know, in relative terms. It's not that far off base from what we had before. Okay, so when we're laying out our objects in here in our iPad version, yeah, things are going to be maybe like a little bit different, just because we've got. Actually, what it kind of seems like we got more of a roof to it in this case, but also too, you know, probably if this is going to be ultimately a board game or something like that, your board game is going to be what? Huge, okay? And the camera, you know, you got a camera over here somewhere, there it is, and your camera is going to do what? It's just going to track around the board game. So it really doesn't matter, you know, that this has a little bit more width or height to it, you know, because the camera's just going to be centered anyway around there. What really matters to us as developers is that we don't have to go in and make these silly duplicate graphics for 2x and 3x. And if you've never taken this approach before, and you've astutely gone and made image sets. I'm just gonna make a new image set down here with 1x, 2x, and 3x graphics, and you've been in Photoshop and you're doing your little bit of math, shrinking stuff down. Yeah, it might seem kind of crazy to do it this way, but it doesn't matter. This is still a right way of doing it, okay? And really, a 3x image, it's just getting shrunk down to a 1x size anyway. You know, what we're doing is we're just making the entire scene shrink down, okay? So so save yourself some time. And by the way, I've gotten plenty of apps approved doing the same thing. So it's not, no app reviewer's ever been like, wait a minute, your scenes are triple what they should be. So anyway, what we need to test actually is that this did work. So on the iPad, we'll just put a red square over here. And on the iPhone, let's just drag out, make this a blue square. And then finally, this one will just, well, it's a different size anyway. So here we go. Let's see what happens. It's time to run the project. Put my foot in my mouth if nothing works. It is always a little scary to teach for 22 minutes and not build, but you'll just hear me go, oh, bleep. And can never rely on the simulator to load up fast, that's for sure. Okay, and there it is. All right, so that was our iPhone, right? It's still putting in some stuff from just the hello world from the Swift file, but we are seeing what, a blue square over there. That's what we put in our iPhone, right? That's a good sign. Looks like it's right where it should be. I'll do this I guess one more time for the TV. So when you need to switch from your phone to your TV, you gotta go pick out a different target, and I'm gonna build this to the tvOS simulator. And by the way, let's get this out of the way early on. Never, ever, 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 ever trust the simulator. Okay. Oh, look and see. Well, this could easily be my fault, but that might have actually just happened because I had that other build running too. But the simulator is never going to run as fast as an actual device. Don't think that because you're harnessing the power of your computer that it can keep up with even the older iPhones. It just doesn't happen that way. All right, so looks like this time around it worked just fine. We're seeing that big blue square over there. Sort of odd actually that it put in a different font. I don't know. And yeah, so that is how we're gonna set things up. And if you just happen to be watching this lesson for free on the internet, that's probably because I've taught this so many times, and I've probably posted another version of it free somewhere out there that I don't really it's just kind of like information I don't mind throwing out there, evangelizing. But hang on, because this is going to be one of our best series of lessons, and it's also going to be one of the premium ones for Cartoon Smart. So you will not certainly be able to watch the entire thing for free. I know it broke some hearts, but consider signing up or signing up at the website to either just be one of the gang or actually pay the site some money to become a real subscriber. That would be the cool thing to do, right? Okay, so there you go. You got it. There's our iPad. Not exactly sure why that's... Oh, I know exactly why that didn't switch to portrait. Let's go back over here to our project setting. I'm going to... This thing... what we need to do is go over here to iPad, and there you go. You can see that it still had checked off the portrait and upside down. And then, okay, so iPhone's got it right. Then immediately switch it back to universal. Okay, so we've got our basically our starting template, and I only wasted like 25 minutes of your life. All right, I'll see you soon.